Hello, everybody, and welcome to Virtual Trek Con with Sirach Lofton, of course.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we are joined by somebody. First of all, he's got magic tricks that he was just showing us with his mouth, and he just showed you for a second there. But if you could believe it, he's worked in the makeup department, the art department, visual effects in Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, even Star Trek, the original series. Somehow he's a time traveler, and today he's going to tell us Battlestar Galactica, everybody loves it, and tons of other stuff. And especially today he's going to tell us about Star Trek Picard and the Orville season 3. It's going to be mind-blowing stuff, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Mr. Doug Drexler.
There we go. And he does his own stunts.
Yeah.
Damn glad to be here.
Well, thanks very much for taking the time. So first things first, can you just explain to everybody, when I said Star Trek, the original series, everybody's like, nah, come on. But you worked on the remastered version, right?
I did consult on the remastered. They didn't do everything I would have liked. What do they have, so, yeah. Actually, what was it? And just as crazy was on the director's cut of the motion picture, I have a credit as a modeler. And the motion picture, I wasn't even in the business yet when it came out. So I've got some credits on films that, I wasn't even around for. And somehow I'm still on them.
Somehow.
Oh, man, I wish I could claim that one. That'd be nice to get credits for stuff that I wasn't even on.
Well, you can go on IMDb, and people give themselves credit everywhere. I find I have trouble on IMDb changing my credits, but other people seem to come onto my page and edit it, and it's nuts. But anyway, the point is that I'm the luckiest boy in the world.
You seem like you got a lot of toys behind you too.
Oh God,
yeah.
I mean, it's been my whole life. I was there when the show was first run. I watched the first season of the original series in black and white. But I'll tell you something. It's an education to watch the original series in black and white. Turn the color off sometime, take a look at it, and then take an episode of any show that came later. Voyager, turn the color off and take a look, and you'll see that original series still pops in black and white. No one shoots for black and white anymore. So that was one of the amazing things about, as far as cinematography goes, is that you've got to shoot the show so it looks amazing in color, but not everybody has a color TV. And it was, in 1966, maybe half the country had color television sets. That was about it. So that's an education.
So
that's it for today.
Sirach and I are very excited to hear about the Orville and Picard, because every once in a while you post a tiny little tidbit about, hey guys, I'm working on a pretty cool show that you like called the Orville, or like Picard. And we, everything's super secretive, of course. Picard's coming out right now. The Orville's coming out, I believe, in May. Which one do you want to start with? Let's start with Picard.
Okay. Well, I mean,
if you want to.
Maybe we should start with Orville, because I was on that before I was on Picard, and I had really kind of come off a tough time. I'd been doing visual effects for like a decade or more with Gary Hutzel. And we had an amazing setup where it wasn't like work at all. And we worked our asses off and had a fantastic time doing Galactica.
Galactica was awesome.
But then one day, Gary went off on location and he died. And, I just did not want to go to work at a visual effects house. I've been to them. I've worked with them, and it's almost like, I'm not offending anybody, but it's like a Roman galley, where they have all the oars and everyone's chained to their desks. Our setup was a smaller setup, and we worked for the show. It was like the art department. It was a visual effects department, but it was part of Battlestar Galactica. The way things work now usually is a show like Orville or Star Trek has a visual effects supervisor that brings in like 4 outside vendors, and he'll break the show up, and so they're not actually a part of the show like the art department is. They're an outside vendor. I didn't want to do that, and I just couldn't see myself doing it. And I decided I was going to make my way back to art department. And so that was hard there for a while. I mean, I missed my partner and my friend, and I didn't want to do the visual effects. And I slowly worked my way in by doing some little odd jobs, like there's a show called Good Trouble on Freeform, and I worked on that. It's like the young chicks working in LA. One works at a law firm, and what am I doing? I'm doing stuff for computer screens in a law office. I mean, can you picture me doing that? I'm sure I could do it, but it's like not.
But Doug, I'm glad you're. I wanted to ask you though about that, because for those of us that don't know, what is the difference in what is required from you work-wise, going from visual effects and then moving to the art department? What are you doing in those departments?
When they brought me in on Orville, what I was moving towards was Orville freaking saved my life. Jeff Mandel, who I grew up with in New York City, and is working on Picard too. We were just kids in New York. He hooked me up with Robert Strohmeyer, who's the art director. They needed someone to do graphic, scenic art stuff, and Jeff, sent him my information, and they saw my work, but they never knew what kind of a geek I was, and that I eat, sleep, and drink this stuff. It's not just while I'm at work, and I don't really want law shows and things like that. That's not why I got into the business. I belong in science fiction. That's what I do. But so my job there was to do scenic and graphic stuff. The playback, the animations, that's not me. That's done by an outside vendor. But if they had signage, or if they had, button panels, I got to do lots of interfaces and stuff like that, which was fun. But what happens is that eventually they learn, Robert and Stephen Lineweaver, what a great name for a production designer.
Totally.
Once they figure out that I'm an illustrator, I could do visual effects, I could do animations. Once they figure that out, I was doing all kinds of stuff, not just graphics. I was doing conceptual illustrations and stuff like that, which is great fun. And they realized that, Robert told me later, he said, I had no idea what they were thinking, but after I left, Robert said they looked at each other and said, oh man, did we get lucky? Because how often are you going to find somebody who knows this stuff inside and out and has done, none of it's alien to me. If you bring in your standard scenic artist, it's a whole different, what's a backlit? They don't even know. So I did end up doing conceptual stuff on Orville, but my job on Picard was not as a graphic artist. I was brought on as a conceptual designer. And the funny thing is that I had mentioned to Tobias Richter, one of the
out in Germany, Lightworks.
He's fantastic, and he does the calendar every year for me. And he said, "Oh, you're going to be on Orville." He says, "I hope you're going to do ships," because I didn't say this, but because they really need some help. And I said, I would rather eat worms than design ships. And you know why? Because everyone focuses on the ships. The director, the producer, everybody is looking at that. And if you're doing graphics, they don't pay that much attention. They just look at it and go, oh, okay, great. But if you're doing like a ship or ship of the week, they are looking at it in a magnifying glass. And you can end up doing it over and over and over again. So when Dave Blass, and I have to mention Dave Blass on Star Trek Picard, he is the reason
He's an excellent follow on Twitter, by the way. Dave Glass.
He's the greatest guy. Dave, you don't have to be a science fiction fan to do science fiction, but I think that it helps to be a Star Trek fan and have some geek cred to work on Star Trek and do it in such a way that fans recognize that there's somebody there who really understands or knows. I mean, a few weeks back, there was a trailer that showed Picard beaming into an alley, and there was a boxing poster on the wall that was seen in the original series, City on the Edge of Forever, when Kirk and Spock jumped through the portal and come out through that wall. There's a boxing poster behind them. When we did Future Tense, was it Future Tense? On Deep Space Nine, we had a scene where O'Brien and Kira jumped through time into an alley. And I said, Mike, let's put that poster on the wall, which we did. It's there. So Dave says, hey, you have any stuff that, we're dressing things out and, there's a scene in an alley. I said, oh my God, I've got the perfect thing.
That's perfect.
I got this poster. And I gave it to him. He put it on the wall. It's only about this big in the background, and it went everywhere on the internet. Mm-hmm. Everyone picked it out. Everyone saw it and said, somebody in the art department. Well, the truth is that it's not just me. And, you got Michael Kuda, too, and Denise are working on the show. Dave Blass knows Star Trek. He knows Star Trek inside and out. He's an encyclopedia of Star Trek. And that's why we're there. Because he knows who did the stuff that he loved when he was growing up. And he wanted to, in his own words, it was like, I wanted to get the band back together.
Yeah.
And so I was brought in as a conceptual designer. I designed a bunch of ships, which I said I'd rather eat worms originally. But you know what? Dave made it. Listen, we went through revisions and revisions and revisions, but Dave made it really fun. And the thing is, the showrunner on Picard, the new showrunner, is Terry Matalas.
Yeah.
Here's another guy who's got geek cred.
Also another excellent follow on Twitter. Those are the two people that are out there with Picard, just like promoting, teasing us, giving us a lot of cool little things to look at.
Yeah, both those guys. I mean, Terry was with us. He was like an assistant on Enterprise.
Really?
And he used to come up to the art department and just hang out with us because the art department was one of the cool places to go. but he was one of our pals, and I think he did 12 Monkeys. He's had a career as a showrunner, and it's amazing. And when I saw that he was doing Picard, I was like, holy crap, that's amazing. I was blown away. And because you've got two major guys there, the production designer and the showrunner, who appreciate where the show's been before, that there's an actual aesthetic. Some people don't recognize it, but there is an aesthetic to the technology. And I mean, there are people who you could bring in to design spaceships and stuff like that, but they want to do Star Wars. And there's a definite difference between Star Trek and Star Wars tech. So Terry was, 100%. He loved the whole idea of it, at bringing everybody back together. And the beauty of Picard, the thing that really gets me, is that now I'm like at 40 years now in the business, right? And half of it was on Star Trek. And as a kid, I was reading the making of Star Trek. 11 years old, I was reading call sheets and stuff like that. Picard brings Picard's life full circle, the series. When you get to the end of season 3, when season 3 really pops, there's some amazing stuff that I'm like busting at the seams to be able to talk about, but I can't. It's just so mind-blowing.
Not for another year or two, at least.
Well, I've seen everything. I mean, I've done every spaceship, so it's kind of the third ending, Well, there was the regular
all good things,
and this is like one more addition to it. So it's everything coming full circle. And for me, after 40 years and 20 years on, doing Star Trek, if not more, that I'm coming full circle too. And I'm with that cast, which was the most fun cast I'd ever worked with in my entire career.
Who was the most fun? What person specifically?
Well, Brent is very silly.
I knew you were going to say Brent.
But Jonathan is wacky too. I mean, I spent a lot of time on stage on Next Gen because I was a makeup artist at the time. Mm. So you're really living with the actors, and you're living on stage and living with the crew on stage. And on that show, the later it went, the crazier it got. And I don't think I ever saw them do a normal rehearsal. Every rehearsal was saying something crazy or goofing off. And as soon as they called action, it was like perfect. And it could be 2 a.m. And they would just hit that mark just perfectly every time. But as far as, yes, Brent is really silly. Jonathan, I think, is the ringleader of silliness on the show. And I think that he brings out the crazy in everybody. I mean, he used to bowl with Sparklets bottles on stage. He'd set up empty Sparklets bottles and take another bottle, and but these guys would be rolling around on the floor, wrestling with each other, and it was just it was hilarious. It's hilarious. I was a big fan of the show before I got there. I got there in the 3rd season. I drove from New York to Baltimore because it was airing one day earlier in Baltimore. So I drove down Next Generation.
Nerd.
First episode, drove all the way to Baltimore. And now I'm like standing right next to them as they're doing their scenes, and everybody really gets attached to everybody else, that I have such fond memories. I didn't get to, I spent some time on stage on DS9, but since I was, doing graphics with Mike Okuda, it would be just to put stuff in, take a look at it, see how it looks, make sure everything's okay. But I wouldn't be like living the, stage is, and Sirach will tell you, the stage is grueling. It could go into the next day, and depending on who your production manager is, they may bring in like pizzas for dinner and think that that's good enough, and you're like, oh God, I'm living on pizza and I'm staying up like 48 hours,
Yeah.
Actually, Next Gen had pretty terrific craft service, but I remember that on DS9 it wasn't that great.
Sirach knows that. You mentioned that.
I remember that too.
Sirach said that he and Aaron would sneak over to Voyager to go check out their craft services.
They
right?
Had beautiful, Chino machines, and over on Deep Space Nine, it was like to go down to the craft service table, and it would be cigarette butts and apple cores on a table. Jesus. But stage is grueling, and you really, when you're under the gun with people, and that means the shooting crew and the actors, that there's a bond that forms that is like family, even if you haven't seen each other for 10 years, whenever you go through something like that, people don't realize how hard working on stage is. That's one of the things I like about the art department. So pretty much I go home no later than 6 o'clock. I like being able to count on that. But, I was on TNG doing makeup, and I was spending a lot of time on the Enterprise D. Mm-hmm. And I knew who Mike Okuda was. And I'd seen the work on the show, and I was really struck by it. It had style. It was recognizable. It looked very important. And when I got there and started working there, and I would have to kill a lot of time, I had my nose up against everything. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy is amazing. He's amazing. He's thought about every bit of this. And none of it is like clanking for me. So I finally eventually met Mike on stage. And I think I gushed. I think I kind of embarrassed him. He could be shy if he didn't. And it was at that point that I knew there had to be some way I could get into the art department. And it was because of Mike. I was supposed to start in the art department on season 7, but the person who was leaving got cold feet and decided not to go. So I didn't get started in art department until DS9. And really, I'm running off at the mouth here. They probably want to talk about Picard and Orville.
Hey, we like memory lane too.
Yeah, we like memory lane.
Yeah, DS9 was really special because it's the show where I made a kind of a quantum leap, into a different, and it's scary. And, I kind of enjoy being scared on the job, because when you're scared, especially in retrospect, it releases, adrenaline, and when it works, endorphins, and it's just like a hormone, rush. So to jump over to art department, and Mike told me that when he told Herman that he wanted to bring this makeup artist into the art department, Herman was like, "Oh no, I don't know. I know him. I really don't like him." And Mike told me that just like 2 years ago, and I was like, "Mike, I never even met Herman before." He was thinking of somebody else,
Maybe that's why he's just like, that guy never comes and talks to me.
I just saw Herman and Dan Curry on Saturday. They went up to the Picard stages, Santa Clarita, to see some of the amazing sets that Dave Glass has done. And of course, it's always wonderful to see them. And
wow.
Next month, Mike and Denise at the Art Directors Guild Awards are getting a Lifetime Achievement Award. And we'll all be gathering for that. Herman will be there, and Dan Curry, and it's going to be great. And they still deserve it. They're two of my very favorite people. I mean, we're talking family, so that'll
So is that who
to talk about for real.
What were you saying, Sirach?
I was just going to say, was that who kind of brought you under the wing and was teaching you about the kind of the ropes?
You mean Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mike told me later that, you see, I'd never touched a computer before. And at that time, the art department, maybe Rick Sternbach had a computer and Mike Okuda had a computer. That was it. And Mike showed me stuff like Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator. I was like, oh my God, this. Because most people were drawing with a pencil at that time. And Mike said he was so impressed because I was going to start in 2 weeks, and I went and bought my first computer. And I crammed for 2 weeks on Photoshop and Illustrator so I could hit the ground running as best I could. And he was so amazed that I would do that. And I'm like, what? Wouldn't anybody do that? Mike's like, no.
It's kind of my job.
So to have someone, first of all, there's a certain thing that happens among people who are real fans. And when you meet them, they're like friends you haven't met yet. I could strike up a conversation with anyone at a convention or on the internet if it's going to be Star Trek. We have this common ground. And Mike and Denise both were just like me. Watched the show first run, and there was nothing like it on television at all. And science fiction was pretty damn rare at that time.
It was. Yeah.
Yeah. A science fiction show was like, oh yeah, it's kid stuff. That's for kids. Science fiction was considered kid stuff in the 60s. And that's why, like Marvel Comics, which is like big stuff today, I was part of that Marvel revolution as a reader starting in like 1959. And I watched all those characters being created by, Lee and Kirby and Ditko and all of those guys. And that was all considered to be lowbrow. And I think I saw an interview with Stan Lee where he said that when he went to parties or things like that, he never said that he was a comic book artist. He was hey, can you imagine that?
Yeah.
It's so great to see him get all the accolades and,
Big time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you started to tease us a little bit about season 3 of Picard, but I know that is way too far in the future for you to really talk about. Can you tell us?
I can only talk about the tone.
Well, can you tell us first about the tone and the artistry of season 2 of Picard, and then lead into season 3 to whet our appetites?
Mm-hmm. Well, the tone of season 2 is different than season 1. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, we see Picard more like we remember him in season 2. Mm-hmm. Plus, season 2 has lots of stuff that if you were a fan, you'll really love seeing. There are moments, I tell everyone, at least watch episode 1 of season 2. There are moments in there that really got me right here, That's really important. A show needs to pull on your heartstrings. It can't just be action adventure, And there's a lot of that in season 2 and 3. It's part of what makes it wonderful, Mm-hmm. I can't go into the plot, and the thing is that these shows are big arcs now. It's like one like this until the end of the season.
Yeah.
We have more outer space this time, which everybody wants. More ships, but especially, and most people know in season 2 there's some time traveling, so they go back to the 21st century.
Right.
But season 3 becomes hardcore, the kind of stuff you remember on Next Generation. There's a lot of space stuff and a lot of people making tough decisions, and I can't talk about it. What I will say is my big thrill really was when Dave brought me in, he wanted me to be involved with ships with John Eves. And so basically anything, well, not just Starfleet, but Alien too, filtered through the two of us. One of the things that Dave could count on was that if I, went over a ship from one end to the other, I made sure everything was there that people expect. You can't just build a spaceship. If you're building a Starfleet ship, there's certain things that people want to see. They want to see an airlock. They want to see a phaser strip. They want to see the markings, the demarcations around the phaser strips. They want to see everything. It's the thing about Star Trek. It's like if you're going to build a starship, you go to Starfleet, Material Command, and you say, well, I need 1,000 feet of phaser strip, standard phaser strip, and I need airlocks, and so. But that's part of the what's exciting about watching Star Trek, that you can count on certain things. If it's a probe, we've all seen probes, and you need to recognize that whoever is designing this stuff knows the history of all of them and is combining it into something new. That you're
wait. You're saying that Star Trek fans may notice if you do something different?
It's amazing to me that some of these shows, that some of the Star Trek shows that are being done, and I haven't watched all of them, but there seems to be, not that they don't care, but they, and I don't want to say that they're not concerned either, but they don't seem to recognize that little things like that are really important to Star Trek fans. And that's how they're kind of taking your temperature, when they watch the show. I mean, if you watch it and it goes against everything that you've seen before, or it's entirely new, or you don't see any kind of a connection, a thread between everything you've watched already, not only are you disappointed, but I see people get downright angry at that. And once you start that kind of a cascade, it's hard to reel it in. I think that there's a lot here that Star Trek fans are really going to like and be happy about. I'm a really hardcore Star Trek fan. Hey, look, I mean, if I didn't like Picard, I probably wouldn't be talking about it right now. I'm because it would be hard for me to. I can't lie about it. Fortunately for me, Picard and Orville, we've got 2 seasons of some fun stuff, and I can't wait till season 3 of Picard.
Doug, quick question. How do you compartmentalize ships and designs that you make for Orville or Battlestar or Star Trek? How do you just separate them in your mind and say, okay, this is for this category? How do you do that?
Well, by the time I got there was an aesthetic that had already been designed for interfaces and stuff like that. Personally, I didn't like it.
Where?
I thought it was on Orville.
Orville, okay.
I thought it was cluttered. I thought that it was too jam-packed. One of the things I learned from Mike Okuda was that the graphics have to make interesting shapes in the background and out of focus. When you fill a panel with buttons from a distance, it just becomes a big bright blob that has no shape at all. I felt that Orville's stuff looked like that and offended my aesthetic. Now, this isn't something that Star Trek owns, but it is one of the keynotes of Star Trek, that the graphics, I'm not talking about the graphics on the new shows. I'm talking about when Michael, was doing it. Not only do you want to break the graphics up in a way that reads in an interesting way from a distance, is that you also want to have some areas where there are no buttons at all, that there should be buttons that are off, and there should be areas of activity and areas where nothing's going on. There's hot spots, there's cold spots. That also makes for interesting, and it gives the impression telling you something very important. And I'm running away here with crazy stuff probably nobody cares about. But oops.
No, we care about it.
This is just showing a little bit of the L cars that you're talking about.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where that L cars came from. That's not actually one of Mike's. But,
blast! I shouldn't just Google. I should Google L cars Okuda next time.
People find it hard to pick the colors because they're watching it on TV, and it depends on how your TV is tuned.
Or maybe this is better.
And also the fonts are always very important. Mike was, that looks authentic. Yeah, that looks like it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So anyway, on Orville, how do I compartmentalize when I'm doing graphics for Orville and graphics for Star Trek? Well, for one thing, no matter what anybody says, come on, man, look at Orville. It's trying to look like Star Trek, particularly Next Generation. I mean, I've been in situations where a little tiny thing will get, like Seth MacFarlane would say, I don't like this number on this panel. It reminds me of Star Trek. And I'm like,
have you looked around?
Oh, whoops. How did that happen?
It's intentional. They're trying to feel like Star Trek. That's their aesthetic. They've designed their own style of it, like the graphics are not the same. When I'm doing graphics for Orville, like I said, they have an established aesthetic. My job was to clean it up and make it look more organized, and like it really was telling you something important. I didn't do graphics for Star Trek on Picard. Jeff Mandel was the main lead graphic designer, and Mike Okuda was like the lead consultant on the show. And you will see L cars in Picard.
Nice.
This is the bridge. The bridges that Dave Blass built are some of the most beautiful bridges I've ever seen, and I haven't liked very many of them since, like the JJ movie Enterprise. I look at that and there's some nice design, but is it Star Trek? And I can't figure out the graphics. They don't look like they're telling me anything. It looks like spaghetti. You want people to look at those graphics and say, I need to know more. That looks like it's saying something. What is it saying?
Yeah.
That's part of the fun. If you do something that is, J.J. Abrams I think doesn't really listen. He's done all this has grown from him.
Yeah.
I can't fault him. He's done a good job for the studio, but he doesn't know Star Trek that well. To him, the look of the graphics is secondary. It's thirdary. It's even fourth. When you have someone like Dave Blass and Terry Matalis, they're geeks. They get it. They know why people spark to that, and it's a wonderful thing to see that type of stuff. Mike and I and Denise went up, to check out the graphics and see how it was going. And oh man, the technology now is fantastic. We used to do, film negatives that were spray glued on the back of a smoked plex, but now they've got big giant curved screens and shit, and even the screens that are clear that you could, look right through. It's really fabulous. Even the button panels are actually screens that are interactive. I mean, when we even when we were doing Enterprise, that if you had a pad, the pad was cut out of wood and painted, and we spray glued a graphic on it. Now you actually the pads really work.
Yeah.
The technology's come a long way, and it's kind of interesting. It's like one thing leads to the other. I mean, there's no doubt that pads and cell phones and stuff were all influenced by Star Trek. It gave engineers something to shoot for, and so now we reap the benefits of that as well. But the beauty of going on a really beautifully designed bridge that uses LCARs that makes sense and looks, I guarantee you saw episode 1, right?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You saw some of those graphics. You could look at that and go, oh man, that's the antimatter intermix. And oh man, that's, you recognize it. And that is that club thing. You feel like you're in a club, that you recognize it, especially now. It's like to see it shown respect makes your heart swell, because you loved it. And now there's someone there who really understands it. I'm not criticizing the other production designers on the shows who haven't followed that. That's their choice because it's their show. And if they want to make it theirs, well, there's lots of Star Trek being made. Why not stretch it in another direction? I have to admit, I kind of like the bridge I saw for Strange New Worlds, the Captain Pike bridge. It had just enough of the original series with the reds and the panels with the the yellow, green, and red blinkies. They put them up above. I'm not sure I understand that, because stuff you put above is stuff that the captain might want to look at. And if it's these little tiny blinkies, it's hard to tell what it's about. For me, the panels with the small blinkies, that's eye-level graphics.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing you have to keep in mind is that when they hire a production designer, there are only a few of them who really understand Star Trek. So what you do is you're looking for someone who is a proven commodity as a designer. You can't say, I'm just going to hire Star Trek people. So you might have someone who comes in and they do some research, but they never even watched Star Trek, which is, it's not unusual. When I was a makeup artist, I used to make up Klingons who didn't know what a Klingon was.
Right.
And it was my job to explain, what a Klingon was and how they, that's the fun part of being a makeup artist. Sometimes you're actually part of the creation of the character,
Totally.
Anyway, do you want to steer this? Because I know I have a tendency to run off, and sometimes I ricochet in different directions.
You've teased us plenty about Picard. What can you tell us about the Orville now that you are deeply entrenched in the Orville, and it's coming up very soon in just a couple months?
My family too.
And we are so excited to see it. We've all seen the trailer, the new trailer that came out a little while ago. And obviously, or it was like a teaser. It was like a 2-minute sequence. It's mind-boggling. It's mind-blowing. What can you tell us about the Orville without obviously giving anything away?
Well, I will tell you that they definitely raised the bar.
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of stuff when I watched the first 2 seasons that I thought, was kind of, that's, to me, the bridge didn't look finished. It actually looks like there's no doubt that it's influenced by The Next Generation. Totally, the railing and the way they unfold the crew and stuff like that. But it never felt finished to me. I always thought that engineering needed to be more, So everything that I had been thinking, they had been thinking it too. And so when I got there, it was almost like doing designs for a whole nother show. They just revamped and added sets like crazy, real scopy sets, and small craft. And you've seen the shuttle. Tom Constantino posted a picture of it, and you could see it in the title sequence. That freaking shuttle, man. Oh my God, it is so beautiful. And when you do something that has compound curves, when we were on Star Trek, a lot of the times the shuttlecraft had flat sides, and they didn't have the money to make something like that. And Seth MacFarlane decided he wanted to really invest in that shuttle. So when you saw it, you utterly believed it and loved it, and it looked fast. I think it's okay if I talk about this. Like, for instance, the hangar deck on the Orville. There's a graphic with a circle in the center, which is reminiscent of the turntable and the original series. I look at that graphic on the floor of the Orville hangar deck, and I can't really figure out what it's supposed to mean. What is it telling me? Is there a story here? I don't get it. It doesn't make sense.
We talking about this?
Yes. What is this? That circle in the center looks like it was influenced by the original series, but I don't. To me, it looks like someone who's not really a science fiction fan did it, but to them it looks like science fiction, and not approved. All I know is that when I got in there, Robert said, "We want you to redesign the graphic on the floor." And it was one of the things I never could understand, the graphic. I said, "Oh God, I'd love to be." I redid that graphic. When you look at it, I'm so proud of it. It will tell you a story about the function of flight operations. You'll see it all on the floor. And when the episode's there, I'll be able to post those pictures. But to me, that was like a huge thrill to be able to do that and make it look like it actually worked. It's not just a fluffy science fiction design. It literally gives the hangar deck purpose, and that gives me a huge kick.
Oh, I can't wait to see that.
Yeah,
I want to see the Doug Drexler modifications here.
I'm proud of that.
Also, here is the current bridge for the Orville, right? Season 3. This is what it's going to look like.
When I watched, now I don't know if anyone remembers. I'm sure everyone remembers those areas, those cutout areas on the arch, were like almost like a burlappy brown color. It was like nothing in there. And the back wall with these circular graphics, which that stuff was done by their offsite graphic guys, Chaos did those. I didn't do any of that. But when I watched the show the first time, I'm like, oh my God, all the cool stuff is on the sides. And 9 times out of 10, they're looking at Seth MacFarlane or whoever's standing at that rail or at the viewing screen. So you're only seeing the cool stuff when they actually have a shot over there with, Isaac or whatever.
Hey, Doug, this color back here where it's like the beige that's contrasting with the blue that looks really cool. It's beautiful. Is that lighting or is it actually painted beige?
It actually is bronzy like that.
Okay.
They redid the interiors of the corridors. They redid all the floors. You'll notice it's not carpet anymore.
Yeah, wow.
Which I look so much better because it's picking up the light from all around it, When you have a carpet doesn't reflect. It just goes like it stops.
Yeah, but the carpet is TNG style.
Yeah. Well, you see, for TNG, that carpet was, the best Star Trek doesn't follow; it leads. And when they designed the D, they designed a spaceship interior that was unlike anything else we'd seen before. You know, I mean, look at this bridge. Look at the Enterprise D bridge. It's made for, it's designed not just to be a command area, but there's an aesthetic to it. It was very important to them for the bridge to have a beautiful aesthetic. I think that some of the bridges forget that, and they want to go back to that cockpit feeling, you know. So anyway, when I watched Orville and I saw that arch in the background, I was like, oh my God, would I love to tear into that? And it was the first thing they gave me to do when I came to work. I can't believe it. I'm so excited. You know, so, and it makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference. But there's so much good stuff, and there's some things that I can't, you know. I mean, I could talk about the shuttle because I know everyone's seen that. But sets have been upgraded, and you know, because Seth is no longer a network show, he could, if he wants to take more time to polish the shows, which he just did, it's not because they're behind, believe me. He's taken the time to do things that he thinks he wants to do it right. So he's like, I'm on Hulu. I don't have to stick to any network schedule. If I need a couple of months, I could do it. So that's really, that's a great sign.
Here's the old bridge, I think, right? Now that you mention it, it does compared to the new bridge.
Look at that. Look at that.
You're right. This whole area got changed and cleaned up and added stuff to all that.
The bridge is so much better.
Anyway, we only have a couple minutes left, Sirach, so
Are you kidding?
Well, that was one of the questions that I had. You answered it for me. At least in Orville, but the question I had was about pace and you know, going from DS9 and having the 26 episode seasonal pace versus kind of what we're dealing with now. Just a little bit about how the pace suits you or doesn't suit you.
I mean, we were doing, you know, 26 shows, and we would get in around September or something and work through to like May and do 26 episodes. And that was normal for us. It's better for people who work on the show because now you're on a season for like 10 or 12 episodes and you're looking for another job already. You know, that whole time I was on Star Trek from TNG all the way to Enterprise, we were doing 26 episodes. As far as the pace goes, yeah, it was a lot to do, but you know, we kind of enjoyed it. We enjoyed the crush, you know, because we had good people around us, you know, Herman and Michael Kuda and Denise and John Eves, and it was a party. You know, we just had a big party doing all those episodes and had a wonderful time doing it, you know. And nowadays, they definitely spend more money on the shows. And they take more time as well. I mean, some of these shows, when I was on the earlier Star Treks, and Orville actually too, there's one art director and one production designer. On Picard, I think Dave has like 4 art directors that are covering other sets and things that need to be done. Although they have more time and more money, it seems like the pressure and the crush is about the same as doing 26. You know, in that respect, it doesn't seem that different. You're just getting fewer shows. You know? They could do 26 in a year if they, you know, wanted to. But that's just the model now.
Well, 26 in a year would be nuts nowadays with the amount of attention they put in and the amount of money they put in. The fact that it's usually like 2 weeks per episode now. That would be, I mean, we would love it, but you guys would die. It would kill you.
You know, I've never minded that. I've been in different jobs that have different pressure levels. I mean, visual effects and makeup, very high pressure.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 hardest jobs I've done. Art department, I can remember some nights where they're going, oh my God, this is so much. And I'm thinking, this is nothing. 'Cause I come from, visual effects and makeup where it was like, oh my God, you're working 2 days in a row, or you have a makeup effect. Boy, that'll take it out of you if you have to do bullet hits and stuff. Now, computers just. But when you were doing bullet hits on people with appliances, is the squib going to go off? I don't know.
Here's hoping.
Yeah, no, that's the way it was. I mean, I had some experiences. It was Year of the Dragon with Mickey Rourke. He gets shot through the hand. He's struggling with someone, got him from behind. He gets shot through the hand. It goes through his hand and then hits the guy in the forehead behind him. So we had those two squibs lined up. The squib on the forehead didn't go off. And we had syringes with blood in them. And I'm pressing that syringe for everything I'm worth. And of course, there's no hole. So his forehead's going like a big balloon. That's pressure. Especially with the oh my God.
Wow. Well, on that note, Doug, this is so cool. And we really hope we can have you come back again sometime, because you've got like 1,000 stories and we've only heard like 9 of them in total. So please come back anytime so we can talk with you, especially once Orville season 3 is coming out, especially after Picard season 2 has come out and 3's come. There's so much more to talk about soon. So we hope to see you again, is what I'm trying to say.
Of course. I hope to see you guys.
Please.
Awesome.
Give the word.
Great.
So much fun. So much fun. Thanks. Thank you, Doug.
It's great to see you.
All right, everybody. Stay tuned for all that stuff. If Doug didn't get you excited for the Orville and Picard, then you need to check your pulse. You've got a wad of blood that's growing on your head that's not popping or something. Anyway, thanks very much, Doug. And thank you, everybody at home. We will see you on the next one. Bye. I mean, live long and prosper, right?